The morning mist hadn't yet fully dissipated, and the scent of wooden incense was already wafting through the apartment. I gave my skirt one last quick brush in the mirror. I'm Stella, 31, a fashion magazine editor. For this Maldives trip, which had been 6 months in the making, I'd all but squeezed every spare moment out of my life, determined to give my parents the perfect surprise so that they could finally be proud of me for once. But little did I expect that this heartfelt effort, poured into every detail, would shatter utterly on the very day of our departure. My suitcase had already been neatly placed by the entryway, adorned with delicate luggage tags, packed full of sun protective clothing and beach sandals specially chosen for my parents. When I drove up to their house, the wind chimes on the porch swayed gently, and the aroma of Earl Grey tea mingled with sunscreen drifted softly from inside. Everything seemed as perfect as I'd imagined. That is, until I pushed open the door and saw my parents standing in the entryway, their suitcases arranged just so, like trophies awaiting inspection. On my mother Amelia's face hung that carefully cultivated, polite smile, a smile she'd already decided upon, one that waited only for the moment to announce it to me. Father Theodore stood silently behind her, his gaze averted, too afraid to meet my eyes. Meanwhile, Luna, my younger sister, who was supposed to be at school, wore a wide-brimmed sun hat and idly twirled a plane ticket bearing my name in her hand, a hint of self-satisfied smugness playing on her lips, as if that ticket were somehow hers by right. Stella, Amelia's voice was as light as mist yet carried an unshakable finality. You're already busy enough juggling story pitches and rushing to meet deadlines. Luna just finished her exams. She needs this trip to unwind far more than you do. I froze in place, half expecting to have misheard her. My eyes instinctively darted toward Theodore, but he simply kept his head lowered, his fingertips repeatedly tracing the buttons on his sleeve, utterly silent. That silence felt like a cold blade, piercing through all my hopes in an instant. I remembered how, to scrape together enough money for the trip, I'd taken on 3 months of late-night writing gigs, turning down every single social gathering with friends, even refusing to treat myself to a cup of pour-over coffee that cost barely over 10 yuan. I recall countless late nights, hunched over my computer, double-checking hotel itineraries and picturing my parents' smiles as they stepped onto the white sandy beach. But only now do I finally see clearly. This family, this home that I've striven so hard to become a part of, I've always been nothing more than an expendable supporting character. My throat tightens, and I force myself to muster a smile that's even harder to fake than a cry. As I turn away, my voice trembles, yet I still manage to maintain a shred of composure. Have fun. There's no argument, no questioning, just utter silence, a silence riddled with the faint sound of something about to shatter. In the instant I turn my back, that silence almost seems ready to swallow me whole. Back in my apartment, I quickly lock the door behind me, then lean against it and slide down to the floor. The motion sensor light in the entryway slowly flickers on, casting its glow upon my hollow gaze. Shaking, I reach for my phone, open the travel app, and let my fingertip hover over the cancel all button for 3 long seconds before finally pressing it down with all my might. The reservation details on the screen began to disappear one by one, just like my unreciprocated affections, silently reduced to nothing. After who knows how long, a sudden, urgent knocking broke the silence. The sound of fists slamming against the door was deafening, mingled with Amelia's furious screams and Luna's wailing cries. I curled up in the corner of the sofa, burying my face in my knees, letting those sounds explode outside the door. I knew perfectly well, they weren't here to apologize, they'd come to lay down the law. If your family had stolen your hard work, taken your efforts for granted, and then, after being exposed, turned around to pressure you into making concessions, what would you do? Would you swallow your anger in silence, or would you fight back with everything you've got? Let me know your answer in the comments. A few weeks ago, on another sunny morning just like this one, I sat at my desk piled high with magazines, carefully planning, stroke by stroke, the trip that I'd thought could mend our fractured relationship. Dad and Mom spent their whole lives running that little restaurant. When they were young, they'd always say, "Once things calm down, we'll go see the ocean." But then they kept putting it off, and before they knew it, 20 years had passed. I wanted to help them turn that unfulfilled wish into reality, giving them the perfect escape from the daily grind. As a fashion magazine editor, my job usually involves working closely with high-end hotels and travel agencies. But to ensure they'd have the very best experience, I took on several extra part-time gigs, working as a weekend sales associate in boutique stores and helping brands write promotional copy. Every detail, from the luxury overwater bungalows in the Maldives to direct flights and private island tours, was carefully handpicked by me. I even reached out ahead of time to local photographers, eager to capture every joyful moment for them. When the confirmation emails for all their bookings finally arrived, I grabbed my phone and ran straight to Mom and Dad's little restaurant. Amelia was wiping down the tables when she saw how excited I was, so she put down her cloth and came over to join me. I showed her the photos of the overwater bungalow and told her about how I'd been awakened early in the morning by the sound of the waves. Her eyes lit up like stars, and she kept pulling me aside, asking again and again, "Can you really see fish swimming at the bottom of the sea? Is the seafood at the restaurant fresh?" The very next morning, I received a post from her on WeChat Moments, complete with a photo of the overwater bungalow, and the caption read, "My daughter is the sweetest. She's brought the scenery straight out of a fairy tale right before my eyes." As I scrolled through the string of likes and comments beneath it, my heart felt warm and fuzzy. Even if her boasting carried a hint of vanity, I found it utterly delightful. I handed the itinerary to Theodore, who was chopping vegetables. He wiped his hands, took it from me, and stared at it for a long while before saying in his deep, gravelly voice, "Honey, you don't have to spend so much." Though those weren't exactly tender words to me, they were the greatest possible validation. I reminded myself that as long as they're happy, everything is worth it, and whether or not they say thank you really doesn't matter at all. Not long after, Luna burst into the restaurant in a flurry of energy. She'd just finished her final exams and was flipping through the itinerary I'd printed out, rolling her eyes as she said, "The Maldives? I'm already sick of using photo filters, and there'll definitely be tons of mosquitoes by the beach." As she spoke, she sipped her milk tea, yet her eyes kept darting toward the photos of the overwater bungalows. At first, I thought she was just being a little grumpy, so I laughed and said, "You'll see when we get there. The night sky is absolutely stunning." Luna's a fairly well-known campus blogger who's always busy filming videos and growing her follower count, leaving her with little time to hang out with us. I deliberately added her name to the itinerary, hoping this trip would give her a chance to put down her phone and spend more quality time talking with her family. To make the trip even more perfect, I spent several nights straight double-checking details, calling the resort to confirm the shuttle service, and even secretly arranged a sunset cruise dinner, just to surprise them. My plan is simple. I'll drive them to the airport. We'll all board the plane together, and under the Maldivian sun, we'll finally become a truly close-knit family. As the departure date drew nearer day by day, Amelia became increasingly excited. Every single day, she'd browse the resort's official website, screenshot her favorite beach dresses, and send them to me. She'd also pull in regular customers from our favorite restaurants to share our travel plans, telling everyone she met, "My daughter is a fashion editor. She's taking us to stay in overwater bungalows in the Maldives." When she talked about the infinity pools, sumptuous seafood feasts, and rejuvenating spa treatments, her voice brimmed with uncontainable pride. Watching her chat and laugh so effortlessly with others, I felt both relieved and a strange, indescribable unease at the same time. In her smile, there seemed to be nothing but anticipation for the trip, not a trace of gratitude toward me. Still, I kept telling myself that maybe I was overthinking it, that perhaps she was just too thrilled. After all, this really was her very first long-distance trip. A week before our departure, Amelia deliberately invited Luna and me over to her place to pack our bags. When I arrived, the living room was piled high with clothes and accessories, and she was holding up a floral maxi dress, gesturing it toward Luna and asking me, "Stella, do you think Luna looks good in this?" She's never been abroad before, and this trip means so much to her. I nodded, though deep down, my unease only grew stronger, but I kept silent. That evening, she sent me a WeChat message asking me to send over all our reservation details, saying she was worried that her phone might lose signal and she'd need to print them out and carry them along. Without a second thought, I promptly forwarded her everything: flight confirmations, hotel booking codes, and more. Looking back now, it wasn't really a request at all. It was a premeditated grab for information. And somehow, I'd unwittingly handed her the very weapons she needed. It was also that night that I happened to scroll through Luna's campus blog post. Big surprise. We're about to embark on a dreamy island getaway. The photo accompanying the post was none other than the one of the overwater bungalow I'd booked. I was taken aback for a moment, thinking she'd simply gotten excited and wanted to share her plans ahead of time. Little did I realize that this dream trip had never been about taking me along at all. In the days leading up to our departure, I kept imagining us, a family of 3, waiting in the airport, gazing out at the ocean, building sandcastles together. I told myself it didn't matter if I went the extra mile. After all, my intentions were good. But when kindness tips into imbalance, it can easily become the very foundation for hurt. I should have noticed the signs long ago. Amelia avoided talking about driving to the airport, and in our family group chat, she'd chat with Luna about luggage, but never once mentioned me. Time and again, I comforted myself, telling myself it was just a misunderstanding, but the truth turned out to be far more cruel. The gift I'd carefully prepared had already become nothing more than an excuse for them to abandon me. On the morning of our departure, as dawn was breaking, the air in the apartment felt so stifling it was hard to breathe. The night before, I'd meticulously checked my own luggage 3 times over. My plane ticket, itinerary, and passport were neatly packed into my carry-on bag, and even the motion sickness medication I'd brought for my parents was ready and waiting. Standing in the entryway, I looked at my suitcase, my heart filled with anticipation, yet tinged with an inexplicable sense of unease. As the sun rose, I got into my car and set off. The streets were deserted, save for the soft glow of streetlights spreading across the pavement. Clutching the steering wheel, I kept repeating to myself, today will be a wonderful day, everything will be worth it. My parents' home wasn't far from the Binjiang new area where I lived. 20 minutes later, I pulled up in front of that familiar house with its red brick walls. The roses in the courtyard were in full bloom, yet the place felt strangely devoid of its former warmth. I parked my car by the side of the road, took a deep breath and headed toward the front door. The door was ajar, and inside, I could hear Luna's laughter, clear and piercing, a kind of joy that didn't require my presence, a joy that pierced my heart like a needle. I pushed open the door and, at first glance, saw Luna. She was wearing a flowing white dress, a pearl hairband, and her nails were painted in a delicate gradient of pale blue. In her hand, she held my passport and my plane ticket, taking a selfie in front of the mirror. Her suitcase was right there next to the sofa, same brand as mine, yet far newer than mine. It even still had that limited edition luggage tag hanging from it. At that moment, I was still fooling myself, thinking, she must have come earlier to help with the packing. But when my gaze fell upon Amelia, all my self-deception shattered in an instant. She was sitting at the kitchen bar, holding a cup of Earl Grey tea. When she saw me, her face showed absolutely no surprise, just a deliberately practiced calmness, as if she were casually informing me of some trivial little matter. "Good morning, Stella," she said, setting down her teacup with a tone as cold as ice, devoid of any warmth whatsoever. "While you're still not busy, let's just get this over with." As soon as I took half a step into the living room, my body froze solid. My blood surged straight up into my head, and the unease deep inside me exploded into full-blown panic. My voice began to tremble uncontrollably. "Get what over with?" Luna slammed her phone down with a sharp snap, tugged at her pearl hairband, and crossed her arms tighter around herself. She shot me a defiant glance, leaning lazily and arrogantly against the sofa, her eyes brimming with smug satisfaction, as if this whole grab had been perfectly justified all along. Theodore stood frozen in the hallway, his back ramrod straight yet his head bowed even lower. His gaze was fixed firmly on the floor, his hands clenched into fists so tightly that his knuckles turned pale. looking like a coward trying to hide from punishment. Amelia let out a soft sigh, her tone laced with unmistakable impatience and reproach, so obvious that it couldn't be hidden at all. It was as if I were the one being unreasonable. Stella, you really shouldn't go on this trip. Luna just finished her exams. She needs to relax way more than you do. I began to wonder if I'd somehow developed auditory hallucinations. My heart felt as though it were being squeezed mercilessly by an iron clamp, the pain so intense that I could barely catch my breath. My voice rose sharply in pitch. What did you say? You're telling me I'm not going? She leaned back against the bar, raised an eyebrow, and looked at me with a tone so matter-of-fact it was downright sickening. You go to fashion weeks and meet clients every single day. What kind of scene haven't you seen? Would losing one more trip really make a difference? Luna's different. She's exhausted from all her exams, and this trip is exactly what she deserves. You're the older sister. Shouldn't it be only natural for you to be considerate of your younger sister? Haven't you always been so responsible all these years? I snapped around and glared at Theodore, my eyes filled with a last flicker of pleading, hoping he'd say something fair, remind her that every single penny and every single detail of this trip had been earned by me through sheer hard work. But he just gave a violent shudder of his shoulders, remained utterly silent, not even lifting his eyelids. It was precisely this silence, the weight of it, that shattered every last bit of my hope and my illusions. He knew everything, right from the very beginning. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat, my voice hoarse as if sandpaper were scraping against it. All the flight tickets and hotel reservations were booked under my name. Amelia, however, let out a snort of laughter, a laugh laced with blatant disdain. I already had the travel agency make the change. They're using Luna's name now. Didn't you send me all the confirmation details? At the end of the day, it was you who helped me out yourself. Luna stood by, stoking the fire, her fingers flying across the phone screen as she spoke with utter contempt. Sis, are you really that worked up over it? It's just a trip. Act like I've stolen some precious treasure from you or something. You'll have plenty more chances in the future. Stop being so petty. It's just a trip? Those words felt like a red-hot branding iron searing straight into my heart. All those nights staying up late writing articles until dawn, all those weekends when I turned down every social gathering to take on extra shifts, all the frugality, saving even on a cheap pour-over coffee, I'd been practicing, all of it, in her eyes, was just a trip. The fury boiling inside my chest erupted in an instant. I clenched my fists so tightly that my fingertips dug painfully into the palms of my hands, and I almost lost control, bursting forth with the urge to storm over and confront them. Years of resentment had long since smoothed away the sharp edges of my personality. I knew clearly that arguing here would only make me feel even more humiliated and only give them greater satisfaction. I could feel my whole body trembling, not out of fear, but from an anger so intense it bordered on madness. Clenching my teeth tightly, I forced 3 words through my clenched jaws. Enjoy yourselves. My voice was unnaturally calm, and beneath that calmness lay a heart utterly extinguished and expectations that could never be regained. I slammed my suitcase down heavily at the doorway. The dull thud as it hit the floor seemed to mark the final note in this twisted family relationship. I didn't glance at them again. Turning around, I flung the door shut behind me, sealing off completely the room filled with hypocrisy and selfishness, escaping from this home that had left me suffocating. The sun had already risen, its rays filtering through the leaves in dappled patterns, yet they couldn't warm the icy depths of my heart. As I sat in the car, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. My face was pale and unfamiliar. The person who'd always tried so hard to please my parents, always sacrificing herself, had died the moment I turned around. I stepped on the gas pedal all the way, never looking back. By the time I reached the traffic light, tears finally burst forth, blurring my vision. I hurriedly wiped them away, refusing to show even a hint of vulnerability. The suffocating pain in my chest felt like a massive boulder pressing down on my head. This silent torment was far more agonizing than bursting into loud sobs. I knew clearly that from the moment they abandoned me, something had irrevocably gone forever. Driving all the way to the small hill behind the city's Central Park, the very spot where Theodore used to teach me how to fly kites as a child, I pulled over, gazing up at the planes soaring overhead, one of which had been meant to carry us off to the Maldives. At that moment, something inside me hardened completely, not out of anger or resentment, but from a stark realization. Some bonds of kinship had long since been utterly exhausted. Either I'd spend the rest of my life trying desperately to please and endure grievances, or I'd let go entirely and start living for myself. I sat quietly on the hill until the sun was directly overhead, and the decision in my heart grew ever clearer. At 9:08 a.m., my phone vibrated. Amelia had sent me a WeChat message. "We've arrived at the airport and are about to board. I really wish you could have been here too." As I read that message, I felt an overwhelming sense of irony. She clearly knew full well that I couldn't make it, but she still managed to say something so hypocritical. I didn't reply. Instead, I simply locked my screen. I turned on the stereo and played some soothing light music, letting the melody fill the entire apartment. I could almost picture them at the airport. Amelia, wearing her newly bought dress, showing it off everywhere. Luna, holding her phone and taking endless selfies, interacting with her fans, and Theodore trailing behind, carrying their luggage, silently keeping to himself. They must have thought that everything was completely under their control. 30 minutes later, my phone started vibrating frantically. Amelia had sent me an accusatory message. "The tickets don't work. The reservation's been canceled. Did you do this?" As soon as the message was sent, the phone started ringing right away, and I just hung up. Later on, she kept calling and sending video requests, but I turned them all down. It wasn't until she called from a strange number that I hesitated before picking up. On the screen, her eyes were red and swollen, her makeup smudged beyond recognition, and she was clutching an invalid boarding pass, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Stella, are you crazy? Why did you cancel the reservation?" Mom's almost in tears. As I watched her hysterical state, my heart remained utterly unmoved. All I said was, "Figure it out yourselves," and then I hung up immediately. The moment the call ended, the utter silence of the apartment seemed to heal every single one of my grievances. Not long after, Theodore sent me a text, pleading, "We're at the airport service counter, and they've already refunded the booking. Just answer the phone and talk this through properly." His tone was polite yet filled with earnest desperation, so unfamiliar between father and daughter. I didn't reply. Instead, I tossed my phone onto the sofa. Then I turned on my computer and checked my email. Sure enough, the refund confirmation had already arrived. Hearing the message, I let out a deep sigh. This was the first time in months that I could breathe so freely. The reins were finally back in my own hands. My phone kept vibrating, so I simply switched it to silent and set it down on the desk, closing my eyes to savor this rare moment of peace. A soft knock at the door sounded. It was probably the delivery guy. I didn't move. In the past, I'd always been quick to respond to their every request, afraid of offending them. But now I'm tired and I've finally woken up. A few minutes later, I called my friend Iris. She answered almost immediately, her voice still hoarse from sleep yet strangely warm. "Stella, what's wrong?" I paused for a moment before softly saying, "I didn't ruin their trip. I just took back what's mine, stopped being their backup plan." After a few seconds of silence, Iris replied firmly, "You did the right thing." Those 3 words felt like a beam of light, banishing the gloom that had been weighing on my heart. I turned up the music, letting the gentle melody envelop me. Sunlight streamed into the living room, and the weight in my heart finally lifted. I knew that, starting today, I'd live for myself. That evening, as I was about to start cooking, my phone suddenly lit up with a push notification from a campus blogger. I tapped it open and saw that the sender was Luna, but the caption was clearly written by Amelia. The caption read, "Some people just can't stand to see their family do well. They've personally shattered their younger sister's dream trip." In the photo, Luna sat on an airport chair, tears streaming down her face like raindrops. Amelia stood behind her, her expression filled with deep sympathy as she wrapped her arm around Luna's shoulder. The caption also added, Family ties should be about mutual understanding and acceptance. Jealousy only ever ends up destroying everything. As I stared at this distorted post, which completely reversed right and wrong, I felt not anger, but profound exhaustion. They dare not admit their own selfishness and greed. Instead, they've turned the blame entirely onto me, portraying themselves as the victims. In just a few minutes, this post had already garnered hundreds of likes and sympathetic comments. Amelia's friends, longtime patrons of the restaurant, and even complete strangers all chimed in with accusations in the comment section. Stella is so clueless. How could she treat her own sister like that? To think a big sister could actually be jealous of her little sister, it's just horrifying. Amelia is such a poor thing, having raised a daughter like that. I could almost picture Amelia's expression as she read these comments, both smug and deeply hurt at the same time. She deliberately set out to ruin me, to make everyone believe it was all my fault. I quietly scrolled through the comments, my heart growing colder and colder. Then I pulled out my computer, opened my email, and found the folder labeled Maldives Trip. Inside were all my payment records, reservation emails, and communication logs with the travel agency, every single document clearly and unequivocally proving that I was the one who planned the trip and paid for it. As I glanced at these documents, a faint sneer curled up at the corner of my lips. She wants to twist black into white. Well, I'll just lay out the truth for all to see. I compiled a set of images, screenshots of the payment receipts, confirmation emails for the reservation, WeChat chat logs showing Amelia asking me for verification details, and even a screenshot of her own social media post that blatantly distorted the truth. Then I posted this collection on my social media account. My caption was simple yet powerfully direct. My mom used to say that jealousy can destroy family bonds. Maybe she was right. From the airfare to the hotel, every single penny of this Maldives trip was earned and paid for by me. On the day we were supposed to leave, I was notified that I couldn't go because my little sister needed it more. I canceled my own reservation, yet somehow I'm accused of being jealous of my sister. The truth is right here. No slander will be tolerated. I hit post, then turned off my phone. I don't need to explain myself to anyone. All I have to do is speak the truth. The effect was even faster than I'd imagined. In less than an hour, my post had been forwarded thousands of times. Iris shared my post in her social circle, captioning it, "Never bully someone whose genuine truth will always prevail." My colleagues and former classmates all came forward to speak up for me and share my post. Some people dug up records of my previous part-time jobs I'd taken on to fund my trip. Others unearthed screenshots of Amelia's boastful posts from her Moments feature. More and more people began questioning Amelia and Luna, and the tone of the comment section completely reversed. So that's how it is. Amelia is so selfish, she actually stole her daughter's trip. Luna has the nerve. She's traveling on her sister's money and then turns around to blame her. I feel so bad for Stella. After putting in so much effort, she's still being slandered. When I checked Luna's latest post again, I found that she'd already deleted it, but it doesn't matter. Screenshots have already gone viral, and no matter how hard she tries to hide, she can't escape it. Not long after, Luna posted another story, just a single sentence, "I was only following my mom's instructions." This post pushed Amelia completely into the spotlight. Everyone finally understood. It was all Amelia's idea. I'd gone to bed early and hadn't checked my phone. The next afternoon, urgent knocking on the door sounded again. When I opened the door, Amelia's eyes were red and swollen, her hair was a mess, and she no longer looked as polished as usual. Theodore's face was grim, his brow furrowed tightly. After locking eyes for a few seconds, the air was thick with awkwardness and anger. Amelia broke the silence first, her voice trembling with tears as she demanded, "Stella, why did you post those things? You've made me utterly humiliated in front of everyone. Do you even know what people are saying about me?" I leaned against the door frame, calmly staring at her without saying a word. Theodore, barely holding back his fury, growled under his breath, "Delete those posts right now. Family secrets shouldn't be aired in public, don't you get it?" They were only concerned with saving face, completely oblivious to my suffering. Amelia cried as she accused me. My aunt blames me for being a bad mother. The restaurant's longtime customers are avoiding me, and even at the vegetable market, people are gossiping behind my back. You've ruined my reputation. Satisfied now? Finally, I spoke up, my voice soft yet firm. I didn't ruin your reputation. You did that all by yourself. If you hadn't snatched my trip away, twisted the truth, and slandered me, how could any of this have happened? Your grievance stems solely from the fact that your selfishness has been exposed. Amelia was speechless. Theodore stepped forward and snapped sharply, she's your mother. Why can't you settle things at home instead of making a scene online? I felt utterly disappointed. How many times have I already expressed my grievances at home? Did any of you even listen? All you ever care about is yourselves. Amelia burst into louder tears, wiping her eyes and choking back sobs. To be publicly accused by your own daughter, do you have any idea how humiliating that is? After I've raised you all this way, this is how you repay me? The last shred of tenderness in my heart vanished completely. I worked myself to the bone, bought you things, and even planned trips for you. This was my reward. But you took my efforts for granted, treated my kindness as nothing more than a tool to curry favor with your daughter. You're the one who's let me down. Theodore's face turned ashen, and he growled lowly, how much have we given up for you? Now that you've grown strong, you're turning around and blaming us? You've really let us down. Let down? I gave a bitter laugh. I've been wanting to say that to you all along. It was you who abandoned me first, who betrayed me. Those words left them speechless. After a long silence, Amelia turned to Theodore and said, let's go. He glanced at me deeply, a look filled with anger, disappointment, and even a flicker of guilt, before following her out. As the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, trembling not from fear, but because my emotions had finally been set free. Their car had been parked outside my window for ages before finally driving off. As I watched the taillights disappear around the corner, my heart remained utterly calm. There was no sense of victory in this, just the quiet stillness that comes after the dust has settled. At last, I'd stopped forcing myself to endure things I shouldn't have. The next morning, my social media accounts were flooded with messages. Relatives sent apologies, friends offered words of encouragement, and even many strangers told me that hearing my story had taught them how to stop putting up with unfair treatment. As I read each message one by one, my heart felt warm and cozy. I made a cup of coffee, sat on the balcony, and gazed at the morning sunlight, feeling as though everything was finally starting to get better. Amelia was probably still busy deleting negative posts and trying to salvage her reputation, while Theodore remained silent and kept avoiding the issue, but none of it mattered to me anymore. That night, I suddenly realized that all the fear and humiliation I'd once felt toward them had completely vanished. For the first time, I dared to face my own feelings squarely and speak up for myself. I'd lost my fake, hollow home, but in doing so, I'd found myself again. The next day, Luna sent me a message that began with "I'm sorry," followed by a string of complaints and pleas. Classmates were gossiping about her. Her fan base had plummeted. Brands had canceled their contracts. Amelia was crying and afraid to leave the house. And even her restaurant's business had suffered. I read it twice, yet my heart remained utterly undisturbed. I muted my phone without replying. Not long after, there was another knock at the door. My neighbor Hazel, holding 2 steaming cups of hot cocoa, smiled warmly and said, "I guessed you hadn't had dinner, so I brought you some." I thanked her and invited her in. We sat quietly on the balcony, sipping our drinks. Hazel spoke softly, "Some growth is hidden in silence. The petty grievances that come with noise will eventually pass." I nodded in agreement. She went on, "When I was younger, I froze out my son because I couldn't accept his choices. Only later did I realize that punishing him was also punishing myself, and letting go of others is, in the end, letting go of myself." She wasn't trying to persuade me to forgive. She was simply reminding me that even pain is part of growing up. As she was leaving, she patted my shoulder gently and said, "You've done really well. Protecting yourself is the most important thing. Just leave the rest to time." After she left, the air in the apartment, which had felt stifling for so long, finally began to lighten up, and everything felt much more at ease. At noon, Iris sent me a message. Your mom left a comment under your post. It's an apology. I hesitated for a moment, then opened my social media account. Under my post, which had been filled with truth, Amelia commented, I was wrong, Stella. Mom shouldn't have treated you that way. She shouldn't have snatched your trip away from you, nor should she have slandered you. It was Mom's pride and selfishness that hurt you. I hope you can forgive me. The comment was brief, yet completely unlike her usual style. As I read it, I felt nothing at all. I knew she wasn't truly sorry. She was just trying to salvage her own reputation, wanting others to see her as someone who knows when she's wrong and can make amends. Iris messaged me again, asking if I was okay. I typed the words, I'm fine, but didn't send them. I tapped on the settings next to the post, turned off the comment feature, and then locked my phone. I don't need her apology, nor do I care about what others think. This farce has to come to an end. In the afternoon, I began packing up my belongings in the apartment. The little gifts my parents had given me years ago, gifts I'd been reluctant to throw away, and the old photos of our family of 3, all of them, I carefully placed into boxes. It wasn't out of resentment. Rather, it was because I wanted to say goodbye to my past self. All those feelings of grievance and constant attempts to please others, all that humility and fear, these should be laid to rest, properly put away, and then let go. A gentle breeze drifted in through the window, carrying a faint floral scent. From afar came the calls of street vendors, and everything felt so vivid and alive. Suddenly, I realized, peace doesn't come from others' apologies or forgiveness, it comes from my own inner release. By evening, I'd finished packing everything. I took one last look at the apartment where I'd lived for so long. The place that once made me feel stifled now held only calmness. I picked up my suitcase, turned off the light, and whispered softly, goodbye, old me. A week later, I unpacked my boxes in my new home near the Cultural and Creative Park. The apartment isn't big, but it's one I bought with my own money, bathed in sunlight, offering a sweeping view, and filled with the fresh scent of brand new furniture. It was the very aroma of a brand new beginning, all mine. As I carefully arranged my books and photos one by one, my little nest gradually took on a warm and cozy feel. One morning, when I went downstairs to buy breakfast, I ran into Hazel, who was watering her flowers. Wearing a straw hat, she smiled and asked, moving into a new place, huh? I nodded and held up my breakfast, inviting her to join me. She politely declined, but then gave me a gentle reminder, let go of the burdens that don't belong to you, and life will get easier and easier. I smiled and nodded, fully understanding what she meant. My life was back on track and even getting better than ever. I quit my part-time job to focus entirely on my main career, and I signed up for a fashion design course to keep improving myself. Later, I took on a part-time teaching position at a training institute in the Cultural and Creative Park, where I taught fashion editing. It's been a real pleasure hanging out with the vibrant students, and it's also made me realize, stories don't have to have perfect endings, just being brave enough to be yourself is meaningful enough. Occasionally, I'd hear from relatives about Amelia and Theodore's current situation. The restaurant business was struggling badly, Amelia had stopped going out altogether, and Theodore remained as silent as ever. But none of this mattered to me. Their lives were their own choices. Luna wasn't having an easy time either. Her campus blogger account had become unsustainable, her follower base had plummeted, and brands had canceled their partnerships. All she could do was take on part-time video editing gigs, staying up late into the night working tirelessly. When I heard all this from Iris, I felt absolutely indifferent. She'd brought this on herself. One day, while sorting through some files, I habitually opened my social media accounts and found a message from an unknown sender with a blank profile picture. The preview read, I'm sorry. At a glance, I recognized Amelia's handwriting. Knowing full well that clicking on it would only bring more unnecessary distress, I simply deleted the message without a second thought. From now on, life will be peaceful and stable. Although there's occasionally a sense of unfamiliarity, it feels especially reassuring. I've placed greenery in my apartment and bought a record player. In my spare time, I listen to music and read books. On Sundays, Hazel brings over some vegetables and fruits she's grown herself, and sometimes we chat casually on the balcony. That evening, I suddenly felt like recording a video to capture this moment. In the footage, I'm smiling calmly, and the soft glow of the setting sun gently bathes everything around me. I whisper softly, not all family ties are worth sacrificing yourself for, and not every hurt needs to be forgiven. Maintaining distance is how you protect yourself. True peace comes from inner strength. Thank you all for listening to my story. If you've had a similar experience, don't be afraid, bravely speak up for yourself. Your courage might just shine a light on others as well. After finishing these words, I turn off the camera. The night outside the window is breathtakingly beautiful, and my new life has just begun.